he could do it, and he knew he could do it, and he was real good at it because he was, had a lot of experience reading people. But he didn't do it like, say, he was a psychic.
Well, let's take that question back to Johanna.
Johanna, let's hear your story.
Do you have any stories to convey to us?
Well, I've been with one person when they actually left their body, and so it was a little bit of going back and forth. I mean, I thought she was done for a while because she'd stop breathing and then start again and then stop and then start again. But, this being the first person I was actually with. But then when she did leave her body, it was there was no mistake about it, because the entire room filled with this gigantic energy, and everybody else that was in the room could barely breathe. And what some other people described, this one other person that was there was like getting an injection of something into your body, because they were vibrating so that you could see it, and then that just sort of dissipated out the door. But I sat with somebody till shortly before he died, and he wouldn't talk anymore, and he was very, very, very skinny, just bones and skins, and to me, like anatomically, that was really almost interesting looking, where you could really see the bones, what they look like if there's no more muscles around it. And I would sit with him and try to communicate psychically with him as to what he would like in terms of music or anything. And when I met him already, he wasn't talking to people anymore. So I didn't expect him to talk, and so he would sit and he would turn to me and grab my hand, and then all of a sudden he would let go of my hand, he would turn around, and he would speak to the other side of the room. And I know there were people there already waiting for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he turned around and he was unable to speak again, and he would grab my hand again. So this went on for a few hours, and then I had to leave. And after I got home, I went to bed, and then I woke up and I saw him, in my vision, get out of his bed and walk down this corridor in the hospital. And you know how the hospital gowns have that open slit in the back?
Mm-hmm.
So through that slit, I could see as he got out of bed, it was just that really very skinny person. And as he was walking down the hallway, his body filled in again to be, like 30 years old and in complete health. And he just walked out the door. And then a moment later, the nurse called me and said that he had just died. And I said, yeah, I know. So
that's all I'm leaving.
I had that same experience with my dad. I wasn't there personally, but he stopped by on his way to say goodbye, and then within minutes, his wife called me, and I said, yeah, I know. He came by and said goodbye. So it was all, everything was kind of a nice experience. I haven't had any bad experiences. As a child, I was close with my grandmother, and if I was home alone, I got really scared, and I would call her on phone calls at that time. Long distance were not cheap, but I figured my parents deserved that phone bill for leaving me home alone at night. So I would call her up, and we would talk, and she would talk to me until I fell asleep. And then when she was dying, she was in the hospital, and I went to see her. And there was a moment that we were alone, and I said to her, I said, I don't think this is okay. You can't be dying, because what am I going to do if they leave me home alone? So, of course, I wasn't that concerned about her. I was concerned about what am I going to do, which is mostly what we do when we lose somebody. We're wondering, like, hey, you're leaving this hole for me here. And she just looked at me and she said, she said, that's no problem at all. She said, if I don't have this body, I can just come by. We don't even need the telephone. So you just call me and I'll be right there. And she died a few hours later. And it took a while, like 6 months or so, and there was the situation again where I was home alone and I was scared. And I sat, on my bed and I said, you promised. You promised to be here. Because I'm here now and I'm scared. And immediately felt like I was in this warm cloud and I wasn't afraid anymore. And I just fell asleep, like, immediately. So I carried that with me, that I knew, there was no real separation. And the way she described it was that it was going to be so much easier to be comforted than anything if you don't have the body to drag. Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
Janet? Because I feel like it goes with what Johanna said. My grandma died. I was in the Navy, and I loved her so much. And she lost her leg to diabetes. That's when I knew, when my husband, I started crying when he showed me his toenail. I knew he was going to die. So I had a precognition knowing he was going to die, and he didn't understand. But it was because my grandmother had died for the same reason, with her leg cut off and diabetes. They both had diabetes, both got their leg cut off. But my grandmother, the night she died, I hadn't talked to her because I'd been in Great Lakes doing my military service, and then went to Hawaii, and we stayed on the Halikoa Hotel, and then we finally got our place. And I remember sitting up in my bed with my husband at the time. He was a Master Chief, but I woke up and I said, I've got to call my grandma. And he's like, at this time of night, are you crazy? I said, well, it's not that late. I think it was like 9:40 over. How could it be? It was really late. But it was really late in Monroe, Louisiana, where my grandmother was dying. She was having a heart attack, but she came and told me. And we hadn't talked for years, okay? And she'd raised me and talked to me just like yours, and always made me feel comfortable. Plus, she was everything to me. And so I don't know why, I guess getting caught up in the military in Hawaii and long distance and different hours and just being irresponsible, 33, and I'd already had kids, but they were coming back and forth. I think one or two was with me and 1 or 2 was with her dad. But that night I called, and the lady answered the phone in the room with her roommate, and she said, who is this? I said, this is Jan. Is my grandmother there, Esther Bolton? She's, oh, my God. Oh, Jan, I know all about you. Oh, my God, what made you call now? And I said, I felt my grandma talking to me. She wanted me to call her. And she says, oh, honey, they're doing CPR on her right now in her bed, honey. She's just had a real bad heart attack. You can't talk to her right now, honey. And I was like, but why? And she talked to me a few minutes, and my grandma was gone. So I was talking to her roommate when my grandmother died, and I felt so bad because I hadn't got to say bye. But my grandma came to visit me, so to tell me in Hawaii that she was leaving the earth, So, but I knew that she'd always be with me, too, because she was able to contact me. Like you said, no telephone. So that's the grandma no telephone connection, Johanna, that people need to know about, So they're still here somewhere. Janet, you got a grandma telephone story?
Well, my cousin-in-law, she was married to my cousin. I just loved her. Her name is Rosemary, and she died of cancer. My sister calls and says, Rosemary just died of cancer. So I went in and was talking through the bathroom door, and I said, Rosemary just died. And I have a cowbell, and it never rings. And the cowbell rings. And then I said, Rosemary, if that's you, do that again. So we had this dialogue, me, Rosemary, and the cowbell. And then I said, well, thank you for letting me know. Have a pleasant journey. And it didn't ring again. It never rings. I only throw in a hurricane. It's like one that really takes a lot of wind to move. So my mother came to my brother and turned the lights off and on, and he was walking down, and the lights went off and on. He goes, oh, Mom just died. And my sister came back to the room. She'd just gone down to the parking lot. She was going to go get some food, and they called her on her cell phone and said, come back, she's gone. And so she still had her mouth open. So a lot of people, when they die, they leave through their mouths. So they go, and they take off. So as soon as she got to the doorway, she looked across the room, and there's my mother with her mouth open. And she hears my mom go, Louise, right in her ear. Her name's Louise. So I was sad. I go, oh, Mom came to Bill and came to Louise, and I haven't seen Mom. And my husband said, oh, they stick around for 3 days. It's not time yet. She's still around here. So on the third day, I'm in Hawaii, right, Maui, and my family house is in Pennsylvania. So she comes and gets me, and we zoom across to the house that I grew up in. My sister had closed it because it's an 1840s farmhouse, two-story farmhouse, and it's pretty drafty. So when they were, sick and dying, she got an apartment that she could keep warmer. So we're going through the house, and the house was haunted. I mean, when I was a child, they were just everywhere. They were moving furniture up in the attic and turning the lights on and off and standing at my bed and knocking on the door. And my whole life was just haunted with, it's like, oh, please, enough. So she said, and there was a stairwell that was locked, and a lot of the ghosts would go in the stairwell, and she would tell me, you're not allowed to open that stairwell. She was terrified of, she knew what was in there, right? And she just said, don't you open it. So she said, feel it, look, they're gone. I go, yeah, the house is empty. What did you do? She says, somehow I was holding them here. Now that I'm gone, they went too. So they all went over on the other side. She was the catalyst holding them. And so and then she said, well, you can't stay here long because, you're still living. And I just wanted to show you. So she grabbed me by the arm, and we hurried down the stairs. And I think went faster than I could walk because it was my spirit form, and down the hallway. And she said, you have to go home. And she pushes me out the front door. And I go, shoot, all the way back to Maui. And I pop up in my bed, and I go, oh, wow. And I said, tell my husband, Mom just came and got me, put me on a tour. So then the next, let's say, that was in Christmas of 99. So in 2000, I was on a tour. So we worked in New York. And then on the way to or from, I forget which one, I said, I went to meet my family and see the house I grew up in. So when we walked in the door, my husband goes, wow, there's no entities here. He's very psychic too. So I took him back to the kitchen where the stairwell was, where all the entities were. Now, the entire time when I was a child, nobody could open the stairwell. And every time, once in a while, you would walk by, and there's a skeleton key sticking out. But my mother had yelled at me so much about, don't touch it. I never dared to do it. And I had a psychic come one day, big, tall guy, like 6'5", and I didn't tell him anything about the house, but he made a beeline for the stairwell. He goes, there's something in there. So that was the day Princess Diana died in 97, right? So he tried to open the door, and he said, nope, there's somebody on the other side. You could see a crack. It looked like you could open. He said, no, there's somebody on the other side. They're holding it in, and there's nothing I can do. So then when I came back in 2000, and my sister wasn't living in the house. She just kept it, and it was closed up. The door was wide open. I had never seen the door to the stairwell open in my entire life. And I went, oh, my God, what happened? So, yeah, when my mother left, somehow she was keeping that door closed.